So, Anthony, the walking lab Joshua, Dux, Boyd Parker, and even this Natty Zane to fight. Royded isn't gonna be Daniel Dubois, right? And it's understandable because, you know, when Parker and Joshua first fight, there was a natty and soft Parker. That Parker already gave a prime, roided Joshua enough trouble, right? And imagine what was this Parker, right? This roided Parker, seemingly over as an EPO, right? Great, much better stamina, right? Stronger, right? Probably better chin, right? Than before. At least chin as good as when they first fought, right? Because the EPO, because although has taken some damage since, right? And the EPO is known to also help the brain, and the fact is probably also got on HGH, TRT, right? This muscle building roid sense, while having even more neck strength training. So now his neck strength is a lot stronger than the Parker. Let's see, the Parker that fought Joyce, right? Natty beaten that version of Parker. So his chin is at least as good as when they first fought, right? And that Parker, and plus he's faster, right? He's more technically sound. He hits harder, right? His rotational speed is definitely better, right? That used to be with Natty. Right? And that Natty Parker already made roided Prime Joshua look bad. What's this Prime roided Parker gonna do to roided Joshua, who's only, right, was just getting back to his prime, but still more timid to throw, right? What's this Parker gonna do? He's at least gonna make Joshua look bad, if not beat him, right? And Zhang, of course, even this Natty Zhang, right, would knock this roided Joshua absolutely out, right? And in devastating fashion, because in embarrassing fashion with Joshua. Rather, right, this 42-year-old stamina, terrible stamina, right, up-shape thing is gonna knock this roided Prime Joshua out, right? See how Joshua's, right, couldn't defend the straight left to save his life versus roided Busik, right? What's this Zhang gonna do with his straight left, right? Accurate and way more harder straight left, and plus just got that check right hook, which just KO'd Wilder, roided Wilder, right? Even someone as fast as roided Wilder got checked by a check right hook, right? And Joshua was now telegraphing his right hand a little bit, right? Is also gonna be checked by that right hook, right? And then hits way more harder than roided Usyk or roided Luis, right? So it's understandable that Joshua Dagzana, and I don't like how his fanboys, his retarded logic, right? Use the amateur fights, right, as an excuse to justify the docking of Zhang the pros, right? As if amateurs equals pros, right? As if Joshua was knocked out in the amateurs by Mihai Nistor, right? A Romanian journeyman in the pros. Right? So Mihai Nistor have knocked this Royder Joshua the fuck out in the pros just based on their amateur fight, right? According to Anthony Joshua's retarded fanboys, retarded logic. And Zhang was also knocked out in the amateurs by another local rival named also Zhang, right? Zhang Junlong. In the amateurs, right? And now in the pros, there are levels apart, right? So Joshua's points victory over Zhang in the amateurs isn't really gonna mean shit when it comes to them two guys fighting in the pros, right? No. Most of his pro fighters are night and days above when they were in the amateurs, right? For example, in amateurs, the amateurs Zhang, like most fighters in amateurs, right, didn't really have proper punch technique, right? Didn't really know how this mechanics works, right? And now that punch technique is miles better, right? It's also, his punching power is also miles better, right? And he used to cut a lot of weight to gain speed, right? And that weakened Zhang. Used to weaken Zhang, right? Weaken his neck strength, aka his chin, by a lot. And now he stopped cutting weight, right? And put on some weight. His chin is obviously, right, a lot miles better, right? Took Wilder who hits as hard as Joshua, and Joyce hits as hard as Joshua, right? Took their punches on the chin, and several big punches from Wilder, right? Without getting hurt, merely got stunned, right? So I don't like how Anthony Joshua's fanboys knowingly lying or simply ignorant, retarded, right, excuses. But the objective fact is Anthony Joshua, at least for now, has ducked Royded Parker and even Natty Zhang, 42-year-old Zhang. And as for this dubois fight, right? If it's and this is what I've seen, Joshua is ducking them both to fight at dubois, right? Because both Parker and Zhang has way better defense than dubois. Parker, obviously, a lot of head movement, right? A lot of ducking down and slipping and sliding, right? And Zhang, although not a lot of head movement, at least got a check right hook and check right hand, right? So it's a defend and counter mechanism, right? And hit hard enough to knock most people out, right? Even this Natty hits way harder than Royded Joshua, Royded Wilder. So both of them got way miles better than Dubois at defending or countering the straight right, right? And Dubois simply couldn't stop a straight right hand to save his life versus Herkovich, right? But Herkovich was just too natty, right? He's clearly not on EPO like some of these other guys, right? And Wilder, Joshua, so many of these more protected, backed by promoters, right? Favored fighters are. And Herkovich, right? He overrated himself, and he took enough damage. Right, a lot of damage from Zhang, beating which is a fight which he shouldn't have won. Right. And the fact that it's not on EPO, which is known to help your brain and your stamina, right? Recovery and shit. So that Hergovich is not the Hergovich that fought Zen. The Hergovich that fought Zen, although still not in very good shape, right? And gassed out in the very late rounds a bit, right? Still had way better stamina and more speed, right? More speed than the Hergovich that fought Dubois, right? The Hergovich that fought Dubois was winning just by 1-2 straight punches, right? Controlling the range a little bit of street punches, and Dubois had literally no answer for them straight rights, right? But that 240-pound musclehead Dubois was simply able to take all of those straight right hands, right? And Hergovich simply gassed out after the early mid rounds, right? Worst stamina ever I've seen Hergovich. Right? But Dubois, the past version of Dubois, the 230 Dubois, right? Even though he was already roided, right? Look at his physique and probably on EPO, so he had decent stamina recovery. And that Dubois put on even more 10 pounds of muscle in and in all the right places, probably around the neck, right? Supportive muscle and on the legs, right? Which made his punch resistance way better, right? And against Joshua, right? One of the most favored guys, right? I don't know if this drug testing agency is gonna allow him to put on keep those 10 pounds of muscle, right? Which he put on using even more weight. But maybe, right, this Eddie, that Anglo cuck, that pathetic, and Anglo cuck, Eddie Hearn, right? He's gonna try to roid drink the shit off the Dubois, while Joshua will be roided to the gills as usual. So if this 230's Dubois, right, pre-Hergovich shows up, right, he would get knocked out. That version of Dubois simply didn't have a good chin, right? And his defense is very bad, right? Very bad defense. But if the two, right, and his bones I know stories didn't make them bone harder, right? But it just seems even his bones seem to be more vulnerable, right? Especially his bone around his eye socket, right? Broken eye by Joyce. So, if that version of Dubois shows up, he's getting knocked out easy by Joshua, right? TKO. No. But if the 240's Dubois shows up, right, he's got decent chance. Simply because, Hergovich wasn't a very big puncher, right? But he's also not a fair fisted, right? And he was able to land every single Dubois, and Dubois was never hurt. Dubois was merely stunned by it. So, if and and you're stunned by it, right? And Roy did Joshua, right? With advanced punching. I think he hits, right? I'm sure he hits harder than Herkovich. But I'm not sure he hits much harder, right? Because because he knocked out then Ngannou, right? Roy Ngannou against the last fight. It doesn't mean it doesn't mean much, right? It doesn't mean shit, really. In terms of top level boxing, right? Heavyweight boxing. Because the MMA guys, the non-boxers simply don't train their necks nearly as much as boxers do, right? Pro boxers trains way more in that department, right? So the boxers' necks are generally way stronger than the non-boxers. So the boxing chin is the best. It's top level chin, right? And Ngannou simply didn't have the boxing chin, like every MMA fighter said, competing boxing, right? Simply didn't have that chin. And when you look at Joshua's fight against Andy Ruiz, right? And Anthony Joshua landed exactly the same right hand he landed on Ngannou and simply and didn't even knock down Andy Ruiz. Right? He knocked him down with his he knocked him down with his straight right hand. He knocked him down with his left hook, right? Not his right hand. So Anthony Joshua doesn't really hit Roy Joshua with advanced punch technique, right? As he has now. Does not even hit that hard, right? Doesn't really hit it that hard. He hit Parker, right? And Natty Parker, although unbeaten, right? And Natty Parker, he hit him with 100 punches, right? And some big clean shots, including a double rotation, right? A left hook that he landed on Parker, that Parker was ducking into, right? And simply only stunned Parker. And look at Zhang. Even that Natty out of shape, terrible gas tank Zhang, right? Fought Roy Parker, right? In the third round with few punches, right? Landed and even that Natty Zhang knocked Roy Parker down, right? Sent Parker flying. So Parker, with that straight right, straight left, right? And Joshua merely stunned Parker in their whole fight. And of course, that went on to knock down Parker another time. So, if that 240 Dubois shows up right, and Joshua isn't able to stop, isn't able to knock down Dubois, right, with his big right hand or his left hook, right, and Dubois keeps on coming, right, Joshua's gonna be panicking. It'll be like he did when he fought against Ruiz, right? And Dubois, we compare the punching power, right? Roy Dubois with the best punch technique right now, right? Since he knocked out that Japanese bum, right? Forgotten his name. Since that time, his punching technique has gotten a lot better, right? Dubois. And he hit harder than ever before that, right? And when he fought against Usyk, right? He hit Usyk with this in the same spot, right? On the belt line. Then Joshua hit Usyk with, and Joshua merely hurt Usyk, but wasn't able to knock Usyk down, right? Whereas Dubois knocked Usyk down, right? The same rule Usyk that beat Roy Joshua twice, right? And Roy Dubois hit that Usyk in the same spot Joshua hit him and dropped Usyk. Something Joshua was not able to do, right? So Roy Dubois, don't regardless if you think it was a knockout, right? If you think, and I think Usyk would have gotten up if the ref just start counting. But regardless, it's still a knockdown, right? And Joshua wasn't really able to do that. So Dubois has proven has more power than Roy did Joshua, right? And the fact that Dubois might be the biggest puncher Joshua has faced so far, right? In the pros and in amateurs. Well, in amateurs, most of his opponents didn't really have proper punch technique, right? The only comparable punchers was the old Vladimir Klitschko, right? And Vladimir Klitschko only hit a little bit harder than Roy did Joshua, judging by their fights against Roy Puliev, right? Although I believe Perdiction was natty against Joshua and Roy did against Vladimir Klitschko, so that don't count, right? But judging by their fight against Roy Puliev, no, Vladimir Klitschko seemed to have a little bit more power than Anthony Joshua. And Dubois also have more power than Roy Dubois have more power than Roy Joshua, right? So Dubois might be the biggest puncher that Joshua has ever faced, right? And Joshua doesn't really have that in and out technique, right? The skill like before, right? Where he can just land his initial right hand, right? Step out, right? And step in again to land his another right hand, right? In quicker sessions. He doesn't really have that technique, right? They does have a decent left hook. And he can get on his bike a bit, right? When the situation is getting too dangerous, right? And I do believe that even if the 240 Dubois, right? The Joshua's punches, they have enough power to hurt Dubois and make him hesitant to come in, right? Because Dubois really has very bad defense, right? For that straight right hand. He has very little head movement, right? Very slow and very little head movement, and not very good blocking, right? Not to mention catch and counter, right? So if Dubois, and forget about Dubois fighting on the back foot, right? Dubois fighting on the back foot, his reach is not comparable. It's not as nearly as long as Anthony Joshua, right? And Dubois, he's not a very fast-footed himself, right? And he's not a good counterpuncher. So, if Dubois gonna be coming for the 240s, Dubois, right, front left angle cock front one, somehow get him to be allowed to keep the 10 pounds of muscle, right? And he's coming forward, and he's able to take some of the Roy Joshua's right hands, right? I still think that Anthony Joshua has enough experience, right? Has seasoned technique, right? Where he can get on his bikes a bit, right? Popping out jab a little bit, right? And just throws a big right hand here and there, and hurting Dubois, making him hesitant to come in, right? A little bit like when he fought against Andy Ruiz. And simply, simply how, simply because how Dubois, right? Mostly because how Dubois, how bad his defense is, right? How how exposed his head is, right? And his slow-headed head movement. I don't see him getting inside Joshua, right? Very effectively, and the ref is not gonna allow him to dirty fighting a little bit, right? Headbutting. That's sure, right? That's sure. So, and so I don't see him getting to his Mike Tyson mode, right? From the Mike Tyson mode and just getting inside Joshua very speedy version. Very speedy, right? Getting inside Joshua like that. Right. And landing his right hand very well because, when he fought Herkovich, then Nady Herkovich simply gassed out, right? And wasn't able to move around ring like when he did against Zhang, right? Another reason why Herkovich was not like this before because when he was for the bombs, right? Able to move. Well, Joshua is able to move a little bit, right? And what's the fight gonna go if Joshua just decides to fight like when he fought against Andy Ruiz the second time, right? Pop a jab here and there, right? Clinch a little bit, right? And lands a straight right hand here and there, right? Well, right. What if, Joshua's just gonna decide to fight like that, right? And lands a left hook here and there. Maybe even some uppercuts. What's Dubois with how bad his defense are and his lack of experience a little bit, right? Because he's very young, right? How's Dubois gonna handle all of them? Even if he's able to take them without getting knocked down, right? He's gonna get hurt and stopped in his track. And ultimately with his lack of defense, right? I don't see him getting hit a lot if Joshua tries that way, right? And the lack of just technique and a little bit of foot speed, right? Counter-punching ability and reach. I don't see him getting to Anthony Joshua as often as roided Joshua would be able to get to him, right? So I think even if the 240's Dubois shows up, I'll pick roided Joshua to win a point against roided Dubois. And if the 230's Dubois shows up, right, that roided Dubois shows up, he would surely get knocked out by the roided Joshua. And it's ridiculous how favored both of these guys are, right? Anthony Joshua, right, after losing to Usyk, fought a bomb after a bomb, right? And contender in Otto Wallin, and Wallin was right, too natty, right? And they fought a boxing, in boxing, right, a journeyman, roided Ngannou, right? And don't think Ngannou beat Fury, but don't based on that factor. It's really to rank Ngannou, Ngannou's ability in boxing, as I mistakenly did, right? Because Fury was simply didn't train that fast, completely out of shape, right? Completely very little strength, right? Very just look garbage, right? That Fury was garbage, right? And Fury himself is overrated, so why do you even rate Ngannou as a top contender just based on his performance against that Fury, right? That version of Fury. And after beating Ngannou, it's somehow Joshua just popped into number one, right? In most of these fucking organizations, right? When Zen just knocked out Roy Wilder, who Anthony Joshua just arguably ducked recently, right? And Archie Kabayel, right? Kabayel who just KO'd a prospect, right? That big roided, you know, Makhmudov. And he knocked out that another contender, right? The roided and looks promising, right? And many people thought he would even could potentially be champion, right? Frank Sanchez, right? Stopped him also. So how the fuck is some organization ranking Joshua above him? Right? All these organizations are clearly, bought off. And Dubois also after losing Usyk, right? Just one fight against Hergovich, and he's back in the, and he's not champion, right? How ridiculous is this, right? All right, another one fight against another fight against Miller, right? But Miller was basically a bum, right? Both of these guys are very favored, right, by the boxing establishment, right? Right. And it's clearly he still wants to make that Joshua versus Fury fight, right? And to be honest, I don't. I'm curious where this division goes, right? After Usyk presumably beat Fury in a rematch, right? Is the Joshua and Fury fight still gonna happen for the IBF, right? And what's Usyk gonna go? Right? Is Usyk gonna defend the other three of his belts, or is really going back to cruiserweight? Right? So, it's definitely interesting how this division is going. Right?